Hi, everybody, and welcome to this webinar about how to parent with a toxic parent. So, with a toxic ex, let's have a look. Who have we got in here? I recognize some of the names. Hello, guys. If you are in this position, if you are on this webinar and you are struggling with parenting with a toxic ex, please pop down into the chat box just a Y for yes or yes, just so that I know who here, how many of you are dealing with this right now. Oh wow, okay, lots of people. Hi guys, yeah, okay, great. So I know we've got more people registered for this event today than we have capacity for on Zoom, so we're gonna just, the guys that are in already, well done. We're going to go through lots and lots of information, but this really is a chance following the webinar that I know some of you will have watched that I did with Stowe Family Law last week. There were so many people on there, so many people asking questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. So I put on this as kind of like to help those of you who have questions that are struggling to get answers. So if you have a question for me that you want me to answer today, please put it in the chat box, and that's what I'm going to be working through. It can be small, it can be big. Obviously, I'm a coach. I don't give legal advice, so I can't advise you on legal advice, but I have put in Stowe Family Law web address into the chat box. It's at the top. So if you have got any legal questions, do go to them. They're the lawyers, they understand the law. That's not my area of specialism, but I can help you navigate behind the scenes, the emotional roller coaster, and just some of the challenges that you face when you are parenting with a toxic ex. Okay, so do put your questions into the chat box and give me as much detail as you can, because that would be helpful, or as is needed, but obviously keep it anonymous if you want. I'm not going to be reading out full names or anything like that. Okay, so the webinar with Stowe, I was also joined by Amanda Hale, who is one of my coaches. I train people to become breakup and divorce coaches, and Amanda is one of those coaches, and she hosted that Stowe event with me as well. She will be joining on the chat later. I think she is coming in a bit late for this, but she will be there, so if you've got questions, she will be on there too. So yeah, let's have a look. Gosh, lots of you popping yes in the box. So what I ask for those people joining, if you are struggling to parent right now with a toxic ex, then please put a yes in the box so I can just see how many of you are actually in it. If you've got another reason for being here, please share. I'd love to know, because I really want to make sure I give you what you need from this session. Okay, this is for you. I've put this on to help you guys. So if you've got any questions, any areas you're not sure about, any situations that you're going through that you want my specific advice, do pop them in the chat box, because this is where you get the chance to get me to answer your questions live. Okay, I can see lots of people are typing. So type away, put your questions in there. That's awesome. Right. So what do I mean by toxic ex? Okay, I think it's good to get clarity on that. Okay. We're not talking about an ex that you have a few disagreements about. Maybe you're going through a divorce and you're arguing over, who gets the painting or the sofa. Yeah, we're not talking about that. Okay, when we're talking about toxic ex, we're talking about abusive ex-partners. So this is continued abuse over a long period of time. This isn't just a little bit of conflict because you're trying to separate your lives. Okay. If you're in a healthy relationship, or you were in a healthy relationship, when you come to separate everything, your ex is committed to helping you get some sort of fair resolution. Okay, they want what's best for them, obviously, and they might be a little bit, there might be a little bit of tension and conflict as you sort of go over the things that have sentimental value, or people feel threatened for their future security. But that's normal. I've seen the most amicable and friendly and lovely, healthy relationships go through a bit of a rough patch as you try to separate things. What we're talking about here with the toxic ex is someone that is abusive, someone that is continuously degrading, putting you down, confusing behavior. Like we talked about on the Stowe Family Law webinar. So that's what we're talking about. Okay, this doesn't apply if you're just having a bit of a tiff with your ex. This is someone that is hell-bent, not getting a fair settlement, but they want to annihilate you. Okay, they want to annihilate you. They want you to end up with nothing. The more suffering that you go through, the better. Okay, the more suffering, the better. So that's what we're working towards here. Okay. So I know some of you sent questions in, so I have those of you that want me to answer those questions, but those of you just joining, if you've got specific situations, do pop them down. I know I've got quite a few of my amazing coaches in here as well who are here to learn about this information. We've got someone who's here on behalf of her brother, because this impacts the whole family. Oh my goodness, it really does. You know, if you're going through this, and anyone you're close to is going to be dragged through this too. And a lot of the time, they're not going to be able to understand what you're going through. Some people just find it very, very difficult. And it's quite normal, I guess, because it's quite understandable that people don't understand unless you've been in a toxic relationship, an abusive relationship. It's really very hard to fully empathize with someone that's going through it, because you just don't think people can be that cruel. You just don't think people can be that crazy or unkind, you know, or talk with such certainty, or cause so many problems, or would do that to anyone, let alone their own kids. But you and I know that this happens, okay? And if they're abusive in the relationship, they are going to be abusive outside of that relationship. And that's a very common myth, that when you leave a toxic relationship, everything suddenly gets better, because it doesn't. In fact, a lot of times, as you start to pull away from the abuse, your ex finds it very, very hard because their control is waning, because you're pulling away. So as that happens, what they want to do is increase their control, which is why post-separation abuse is a massive, massive thing. A lot of people don't understand that happens, but for those of you going through it, and I can see lots of comments coming in now, that it does. Okay, and that post-separation abuse can sometimes be just as bad, if not worse, as the abuse when you were in the relationship. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. How can you manage that post-separation abuse? Because quite often then they can't control you physically because you're not actually in the same home as them. But what's left? Well, finances and children quite often, and dragging out the divorce case. So this is why the after separation is really, really, well, one, can be dangerous, because sometimes that behavior that's only ever been emotional abuse can quite easily switch over to physical abuse. So you have to be aware of that. And just to say right now up front, if you are in a relationship, or you are feeling threatened physically by your ex, you don't feel safe, then please call the police. Okay, that's what you need to do in those situations. If you feel you're in danger, or your kids are in danger, then calling the police, if you're in imminent danger, is the most important thing to do. Okay. There are lots of domestic abuse charities out there that can help you navigate this process. Now, those of you may know, I am patron of the Dash charity, which is based Windsor, Maidenhead and Slough area. For those of you in that area, they give phenomenal support. They also have refuges for women and children all over the country. But there are lots of domestic abuse charities that can support you, okay, through this. Now, I know a lot of them struggled during the pandemic because the number of calls went up massively, and they only had, a certain amount of funding, as always. But Women's Aid, there are charities for men as well. Do check out your local domestic abuse charity, because they can give you some support for free, which is really important as well, because I know how tricky it can be when finances are being squeezed. So there is help out there. Okay, so I want to point you to that. Obviously, this is an area that I coach, and I train a lot of my coaches to coach in this area as well. Some of them are specialists in this area and have years of experience. So if you are looking for more specialized help, then do reach out. SaraDavison.com is my website. Okay, let's start going through some of these questions. Right, Faye says, managing school meetings with staff and ex when there's possible additional needs to assess for our young child, and ex is painting it as my doing, creating poor behaviour, but no need for further assessment, etc. And apparently the child never displays these situations with him, which the child has shared otherwise. Okay, right. Okay, these situations are all going to be extremely difficult, okay? And for those of you who are listening, a lot of this is going to, potentially, resonate with you too. Okay, so please know this is a safe place. If you've got a problem, flag it up on the chat. I'm here for you today, okay? I'm going to give you some help with these things. Obviously, there's no magic wand to take away all the pain, because your ex knows exactly how you're wired and is going to be pushing your buttons. What we can't do is control your ex. What we can do is control how you respond to that. Okay. And that's about you taking your control back. Okay. So as I go through these questions and answer them for you, I'm going to give you some premises. We're first of all working on the fact that none of this is your fault. Okay. None of this is your fault. You didn't do anything to deserve this. It's nothing that you have triggered or your child. Okay. This is a personality disorder that you're dealing with. And there are always going to be these little grenades thrown in, exactly like Faye's just mentioned here. If any of this makes you feel a little bit upset, please know that getting this clarity is giving you more power. Okay, sometimes it can be a little bit shaky. It can maybe make you feel a little bit sad. But, ultimately, by the end of this session, I'm hoping you're going to feel so much more empowered because you've got more clarity about what they're doing, clarity about what you can do to take your power back over this. One of the most important things that I would like you to do is to start asking yourself a certain question. And that question is, how can I take my control back over this? Because one of your ex's goals is going to be to control everything. And it may feel at times like they are completely in control of your life and pulling your strings as a puppet. But what I want to say to you is you can take your control back, okay? But it takes a little bit of practice and seeing things from a slightly different angle. Okay, so if you bear in mind that question and write it down if you can, how do I take my control back over this? Okay, because we can't control what they're doing. We can control what you do, what you say, and how you react and how you process this and what you do next. So you actually have a lot of control over that. Okay, so bearing that in mind, managing school meetings with staff and ex. Okay, so in Faye's situation, there's lying, there's confusing behavior, there's gaslighting going on. And guess what? That happened in the relationship. It's not going to stop. It's going to carry on into everyday life moving forward. Okay, they're not going to stop being who they are. Okay, they're going to find other ways to do it. So here, managing school meetings with staff and ex. Now, I have an exercise which enables you to go in and manage the emotional side of it, which is called Functionally Friendly, which I discussed on the STOW webinar, which is really where before you mentally prepare to go into any situation where you're going to see your ex and spend any quality time with them. So what you do is you imagine the scenario and you imagine it going as well as it possibly can. Okay, because I want you to run it through in your head. So you've almost practiced it, 10, 20, 30 times, as many as you can, because then your brain actually thinks, oh, I know this, and it's not going to be so shocking for you. And then we prepare to zip up the Teflon suit before you go in, and actually understanding that your ex is going to try and throw little, I call them grenades, into the conversation to upset you, to damage your mood, to worry you. So instead of being hit by that, taking the full impact, we play a little game called Spot the Grenade. Okay. So what we do is we're disassociating, we're expecting it. So do you remember in the STOW webinar, I said, if your expectations that your ex is going to be decent, is going to be nice, are up here, you're hoping that they're going to be normal on this occasion. And then the reality is what they do is down here, terrible behavior. That gap between what they actually do and where your expectations are, that gap is hurt, fear, pain, distress for you. Okay, not for them. And they'll get a little win out of it because they'll see that grenade has landed with you and hurt you. So what we want to do is we want to reduce our expectations to literally lower than the ground surface, okay? Lower than that. Because if you can do that, then everything they do that's any better is a bonus. And whenever they do something bad, you're like, and then you're playing the game. And a lot of people find that uncomfortable that we're in a game, but you are, unfortunately, in a game because they play a game with everybody. And they're going to be moving you around like a pawn on a chessboard. And so you can just go with that, or you can learn the rules of the game, master it, and be 2 steps ahead. Okay. This is the kind of content that I teach in my retreats and to my coaches. This is really important, guys. Okay. We need to get into the understanding that they're just playing a game with us. Okay. So this is dialing down some of the negative intensity of the situation because you're understanding that you're in a game. So you've got to learn the rules of the game. There's no point being upset continuously. So, for example, when you're going into a meeting with your staff and your ex, you're preparing before you go and you're expecting it to be difficult. If your ex knows what you want, which clearly for Faye they do, they're going to do the opposite. they're going to do the opposite. And this appears to be what's going on here. Obviously, I don't have that much information, but she wants an assessment. Her husband's saying doesn't need it. Husband's saying it all happens when it's with her, doesn't happen when it's with him. Now, any sane person, like the staff, hopefully, are going to know that that's just ridiculous. The child isn't doing that just in one place, and they'll know the child better than that. But first of all, this is a common tactic, okay? It's to shift the blame onto you all the time. It's never going to be their fault. They're the perfect parent, okay? You are everything that is not perfect. You're the one that's causing all the problems, never them. And it's going to be lying. It's going to be confusing behavior. So all you can do is anticipate that's going to happen. Now, if you want to achieve something with them, don't tell them what you want, because they're going to do the opposite. Now, in some cases, that isn't possible, and you might have to rely on the staff. But I would suggest having a meeting with the staff individually, explaining the situation, not bad-mouthing your ex, obviously, but just saying we've got very different points of view. He's saying it doesn't happen there. I would find that confusing, but even so, there's still a problem. And see if the school can step up and recommend something independently, because he's going to block it. Now, a school may have more of a say. So that could be an avenue to explore, Faye. Without more information, it's difficult, but this is common, okay? And this is what it's about, playing the game. If you're going to go to a school meeting with those kind of things, you're going to know he's going to do the opposite of what you want him to do in this scenario. Okay, he's not going to put the kids' needs first. And again, don't feel that disappointment if you can help it, because your expectations should be that, not that, I'm hoping they're going to be this amazing parent, because ultimately they don't feel empathy, and it's all about them, and it's all about hurting you. Actually, the child can be, in some cases, irrelevant to it. It's all about how do they cause maximum pain to you. Okay, we're going to keep going because I want to get through lots of questions here. Okay, my ex is verbally abusive and was physically abusive to me. If I disagree with him, he threatens me with family court proceedings. How best to cope with parenting my 8-year-olds? He's not able to co-parent fairly or reasonably. My kids are anxious as a result. Okay, thank you, Claire, for putting this in. Very common scenario, unfortunately. If you are, I'm thinking here that you must be separated, because that seems to be the gist. Even though you don't quite say it. So I'm just going to take this as I don't have enough details specifically to answer on this case, but with the information that you've given me, how best to co-parent. You cannot co-parent with a toxic ex. Okay, so take that idea, throw it out the window. It's impossible. Like I said, for Faye's question, whatever you want, they're going to do the opposite. Okay, so there's no kind of co-parenting, let's agree something, because then they know what you want, and then they're going to do the opposite. So what we have to do is pick our battles, okay? We really have to think consciously. If there's issues over screen time, bedtime, you've kind of got to let it go, because kids are more resilient. And at 8, they're pretty resilient now. They're going to be learning a lot about what's right and wrong right now. They're going to be seeing behavior that isn't consistent with the behavior in your house. So you are going to disagree because you don't have the same parenting style. So what we have to do is agree on the bigger things. And again, that can be difficult, but it's called parallel parenting. It's where you don't get into all the nitty gritty of, screen times and all those things. You can't control what they're doing. And in fact, as I said, if you let them know, I want them in bed by 8, and they disagree, go, right, we'll put them to bed at 10. That's just the way it's going to go. So actually, I find that the best way to work with somebody who's toxic is just to parent independently. Set your own values, your own morals in your own house. You might have some rules like there's no lying, there's no bullying, there's no shouting, if you know that's behavior that goes on in the other house. That way you're not bad-mouthing your ex, you're just having very clear separate values and morals in your house, okay? And they are non-negotiable. Your boundaries have to be high on those. And that's showing them what the moral compass is, okay? And hopefully that's reflected by school and your family and other friends that come in and out of your home, right? So they'll see that that's what it's like in your world. And by contrast, they're going to notice it's not quite like that at the other parent, okay? So this is something that you can do to show kids what's right and wrong, but without bad-mouthing the other parent. He's never going to parent fairly or reasonably, so you have to let go of that. I know it's really hard, but he's not going to do that. And ultimately, we want our kids, as long as it's safe for them to do so, and that's something that's very important, as long as it is safe for them to go and spend time with their other parent, then it is very good for them to be able to have that relationship. Obviously, it's vital that they can build their own relationship with that parent, however difficult, challenging, unfair, unreasonable they are. They have to be able to forge their own relationship with that parent, okay? Because, they're not, our ex isn't our parent, okay? It's their parent. It's our children's parent. So it's important that they have that bond and they have a relationship, but obviously, with understanding right from wrong. So it is important to shine lights without bad-mouthing your ex on what is right and wrong as well. It's a fine line sometimes to navigate. If he's threatening with court proceedings, my advice is the last thing you want to do with a toxic ex is get anywhere near the court system. It is fundamentally flawed. And there's a lot of research out there saying that victims of abuse are re-traumatized by the family court just because they just are not either educated, trained, knowledgeable, or maybe they have some intrinsic beliefs. Obviously, we're dealing with individuals with personal belief systems in the family court system. It doesn't serve victims of abuse to go into court. Now, you're not going to go in there and get justice in the way that you necessarily think you will. I mean, obviously, in some cases, great, and there are some great family law practitioners in the family court system. But there are also some very, some people in there that are not going to help your cause. Okay, let's put it that way for now. And so I would rather, all the cases that I've worked on and witnessed over the last 12 years I've been working in this industry, immersed in it, it doesn't pay if you can help to get into court. Sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes you are dragged into court. But in a lot of cases, if you've got the choice, it is going to be better for you not to get caught into that. So again, pick your battles. Getting sucked into the court system is not great because the outcomes are unpredictable, shall we say. Priya. I'm trying not to say horrible things about my ex to the children. I'm being accused of it, but I've maintained being kind. He is saying the children want to be with him. He's trying to take them off me. Is it wise to educate their children on his behavior? I feel as though if I say what he's like, I'm judged in court. Yeah, you will be. But if I stay quiet, they think he's Disneyland dad. What can I do? Okay, in this kind of scenario where it sounds like if he's trying to set them off, you maybe court is involved. I don't know. But absolutely. I mean, the thing is, never badmouth your ex. And I know that's really hard because, sometimes it's just factual, right? That they are being unkind and cruel and everything like that. I think keeping a diary of everything that's going on so that you have evidence to back this up if you do go into a court scenario is important. I also think that it depends on the kid's age. You don't want to say anything about their dad, but I do think by contrast, as we already talked about, they'll learn a lot. Okay. And if there are lies being told, then I think it is important that you set that straight. However, not in a way of, well, your dad's lying, Priya, not that, but saying, look, sometimes we disagree. This is what daddy thinks, and this is what I think is the truth. And then if, for example, there's an argument at school or someone's lied to them, as there will be as they grow up, right? Use those real life experiences just to reflect them. See, some people say things that you think aren't true. And how do you feel about that? Yeah, that's really frustrating, right? And so you're just really highlighting that the difference between if someone's lying to you and you know it's a lie, rather than going, well, this is what daddy does to me. We're not explaining it like that, but we're highlighting that these things happen. And eventually as they get older, they'll start to join the dots. Okay. That, when you say, actually, this is one of those scenarios where I don't agree, and this is my truth. So again, it's not about bad mouthing ever, but it is about being honest, because otherwise your kids get confused. They get confused. They might be witnessing things thinking, well, this doesn't feel right, but mummy isn't saying anything, or daddy, because this works both ways. Okay. It predominantly is a female issue. I have to say, is predominantly against women, but it does happen against men. So I do have quite a few clients who are male going through exactly the same things. So also, again, we want to do the right thing by the kids. Okay. And that's our responsibility. So again, making sure that, that they have a good relationship with their dad is okay. But if there's things that come up that are not right and they ask you about it, then you can set them straight on without bad mouthing. Okay. Let's see. What's next? My ex is abusive out of the relationship as well as in the marriage. It's worse for me out of the relationship 2 years of post-separation, 2 years post-separation. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, because you think you're out and it feels like you're liberated, you get your freedom in a short burst, and then suddenly you realize that they've still got their hooks into you. Now, we need to cover this because you can't live your life being controlled by them and being battered by them emotionally because of the tricks and the games that they're playing with you. Okay, I really don't want that for you. And I know that it can feel like there isn't a choice, but you have a choice. Okay, you really do have a choice. It's not easy. Okay, it's not easy. And I've interviewed a lot of people on exactly this topic on my podcast, Heartbreak to Happiness. And I've put the link up there. And I think it's the first one in the chat. So it's a free resource. Go listen to the different interviews of people like Alison Bourne from the Dash charity, the CEO, Rachel Williams, who's a survivor of abuse, does a lot of campaigning. I've interviewed the Domestic Abuse Commissioner, Nicole Jacobs, who's an amazing woman. She's the Domestic Abuse Commissioner for England and Wales. I've also got Nicola Sharp-Jeffs on there, who talks a lot about financial abuse. I mean, I've got lots and lots and lots of people. We've got Natalie Page. I've got Rachel Watson, who's incredible. If anyone's going through the court system with their ex, listening to that interview by Rachel Watson, follow her on Twitter. She has amazing blogs. If anyone's dealing with alienation, anything like that, Rachel Watson and Natalie Page. Natalie Page is behind the hashtag The Court Said campaign, which you can follow on Twitter. So educating yourself about what you're going through by learning about other people's experiences is going to be key. So I've given you a few techniques already, but I think one of the things is we need to disassociate from them and keep asking the question, Claire, about how do I take my control back? Okay, we've got to stop being dependent on them for anything at all. And in the Stowe webinar, I talked about one of my clients who was dependent on her ex to pick up from school, one of the kids, because they both had very separate interests. You know, what we need to do is build our own, what I call breakup support team, so we're not reliant on them for anything. And I know that's difficult because some of you are going, well, I just don't have any family or friends. And I get that, but it's going to stay the same until we start to do things that can build you up that network. Okay, maybe it's another parent going to the same club that can pick your kid up, drop them back. Maybe maybe you can return the favor on other days. You know, it's about trying to find something that works so that you're not dependent. Now, if you're saying, yes, but they should be doing this, they should be providing this, I understand that, but we're not dealing again with a logical, caring, rational, empathetic person. Okay. So you're going to be hitting your head against a brick wall continuously if you take that on and keep going in that way. Okay, if you have that belief system that they should do it, and if you keep doing it, keep going, maybe they will, that's only going to be more heartache and pain. Remember, the expectations versus reality. This gap in the middle is just massive torturous pain for anyone that isn't really going, you know what, I'm going to cut you out as much as possible of my life, not of the kids' lives. You still, because obviously that's important, but we're cutting those strings so that you are not dependent on them is absolutely critical. Okay. And then also learning to disassociate with the pain, with what they're doing. And how do you disassociate? Well, a lot of you may have moved away from your ex, you may be in different homes, but that abuse is still going on. I know there's questions about that. If whilst you are living in a different home, that is still going on, it's because you're still associating with your ex. What we need to do is disassociate emotionally, not just physically. And that comes from playing the game. And when they're doing certain things, some certain behaviors, you're looking at it going, that's one of your tactics. That's a toxic ex tactic. Okay. So what are those tactics? Let's have a little look at what those are, because I think that will really help. So, for example, I want to go through a list of because I went through some in the Stowe webinar. This is slightly different. This is how do you know if your ex has an abusive personality? Okay, how do you know? Well, if this is a checklist, right, this is your game sheet. So I want you to, every time something goes on with them, instead of going to this really hurts and this is really frustrating, I want you to disassociate by going to this list. So write these things down if you can, and ticking off and just seeing school sheet. What is the tactic you're deploying right now to get me to react? Okay. So, do you recognize any of these in your ex-partner? A sense of self-importance, living in a fantasy world related to their brilliance, their abilities, their powers and attractiveness to others, a constant need for praise and attention, a sense of entitlement, no shame or guilt about how they treat other people, a lack of empathy, God complex, so inflated feelings of personal ability, privilege, they can do whatever they want. They are a very convincing liar or con artist, okay? They live in the moment. By the way, I'm recording this, so the recording will be available. So if you're scribbling right now, don't worry, you can listen to this later on. They live in the moment. They never accept blame or the consequences of their actions. So it'll always be somebody else's fault, never theirs. Bullying, belittling, or intimidating others. Mirroring, which is when they accuse you of doing what they're actually doing. So again, that's something that's very, very common. And quite often you'll be left feeling completely confused and gaslighted because you're like, well, hang on, they said that I was unkind, but I was telling them to stop doing that because I thought that was unkind. It's exactly what they do. Okay. So it's really when they do something and they accuse you of something, you think, you think you're being unkind. Tick. Okay. This is the mirroring one. Okay. So instead of taking it on and then going down that sort of distraction route of, am I unkind? What did I do that was unkind? Could they have seen it that way? What we want to do is we want to go, tactic, mirroring, tick. Okay. That's as simple as this exercise is. They might have an addiction. So are they under the influence of drugs or alcohol? What's going on? They have an all or nothing attitude. So they're either all in or they're all out. Okay. They've got huge insecurities, even though you probably won't see them because they're projecting to the rest of the world that they don't have any. And they're very charming. Okay. So those are some of the things that we want to be looking at, going, what are they doing? And then obviously, are they gaslighting? Are they lying? Are they trying to erode your self-confidence? Are they trying to make you doubt yourself? Are they trying to restrict your access to making your own decisions? Are they trying to isolate you from friends and family? Are they making you feel like you're walking on eggshells so that you don't do something again? Quite often, if you do something they don't like, or you ask a question, say I've got a client who's asking questions about money at the moment because she's not sure where all the money is, they get very aggressive suddenly. When you get very aggressive, that means that you just retreat, right? Go, oh God, I'm not going to go there again because I know the reaction is horrible, so I'm not going to say anything, right? So that's how they keep you, because then they're training you, right, not to question things. Because what happens from that is too bad. You can't cope with it. So you retreat because that's your personality being empathetic. Because by the way, to be with someone like this, you have to be really empathetic. You have to be a fixer. You have to want to help people. You have to be the kind of person that doesn't really like conflict and you'll try and resolve it. You'd rather suck up the pain yourself than anyone else suffer. Okay, which is a really nice quality. And we don't want to change that. But these people feed off this. They can't be with people who are selfish and mean like that. They can't, because it won't work, because they'd be like, on your bike, I'm off to meet someone new. Okay, but empathetic people want to work, just go, don't worry, I'll look after you. Well, you've had a bad day. Okay, so it's not your fault. None of this is your fault. You need to be really clear on that, but that's part of why this happens. Okay, so if any of these tactics are going on, if you can tick them off in your mind and play the game of spot the tactic, right? Instead of taking it on board and thinking, oh, this is really hurtful, why are they doing it? It also disassociates you emotionally. Okay. And once we start to unhook emotionally, that's how you get your control back. And you can start to then go, okay, I see what you're doing. This is what you want. This is where you want me to be. But now I need to work out, what can I do to take my control back? How can I minimize this? How can I make sure that I get the outcome that I really need for me and my children, rather than fighting you on this? Okay. Because sometimes it's easier to figure out what they want and then work the game so that you can get what you want by the back door. And it's not going to be telling them what you want, because obviously they'll use that against you. I know this is really tough to hear, guys, but unfortunately, this is kind of how it goes. Okay. Right. Let's see. Faye says, thank you. Claire's been separated for 2 years. Faye says, yes, I ended up being more traumatized by the court process than I was in the abusive marriage. Yeah, there's been some research recently that's just shocking and just shows that a lot of victims are more traumatized. Yeah, exactly. Okay. A lot of people agreeing with you there, Faye. Okay. So Christina says, we have a court date that is really quite vague. The court didn't want to micromanage. And my ex and I are expected to sort things out, e.g. school holiday schedule. between us. He's routinely does not respond to my emails about a schedule for a number of weeks. Also, because it's quite vague, I often feel railroaded by his interpretations, e.g. Christmas handover happens in the morning on Boxing Day. He will not give me a time other than to say they will be with me no later than 11:59. Any suggestions how to manage this interaction without feeling like I'm just being walked all over? Yeah, I do. I mean, this is something that everyone that's on here who's dealing with this will be dealing with, because it's really common, like the access and the schedule. It's just, just a field day for them, because it gives them, 365 opportunities to just screw with us, right? So you've got to expect it's going to happen and just disassociate a little bit, okay? And then work out, what can you do? Right, I would then think, right, he's saying no later than 11:59 a.m. Great, 11:59 it is then, okay? So then you work around that. Now, again, you can go back and try and corner them or trying to persuade them to come back with a time, because I'm not sure, but maybe you want to go somewhere in the morning and you can't because of this. So what we have to do is, yes, you are going to have to manage your time around this, because obviously your kids are going to come first. You're going to want to see them. So if they come back at 10, you're going to want to be there. So how do you take your control over what you can control? Okay, maybe it's having people to your house in the morning and not expecting your kids to come back with your expectations to 11:59. Okay, so that is about taking control. You can't go back. If you go back and fight him on it, he's going to love this. This feeds the abuse, and actually it will make it, because they'll go, oh, great, I'm getting the response. So go, great, 11:59, great. And then you work with that. And I know it's like, you're not being walked over, okay? You're doing the best for your kids, and you're seeing it for what it is. Because what is that? That's manipulation, that's twisting things, that's gaslighting, that's confusing, that's trying to, cause you as many problems as possible, which is what he's doing. So how can you just take it out so it's not? So, okay, 11:59 at the latest, perfect. That's it, okay? Don't get into any nitty gritty, don't go backwards and forwards. Take it and work with what you've got, okay? Now, again, sometimes you could say things like, this is the schedule, I'm going to send it to you, and if I don't hear back, then it's agreed. Sometimes that can work, because then if you do end up in court, you've got all this correspondence saying, well, I said it was agreed, you're not coming back to me. If you ignore me, I assume that you're okay with it. Okay, so sometimes that can work, because then they'll have to come back. But the challenge is they are going to use any opportunity. And when the kids are young, there are going to be a lot more opportunities. And the kids get older and they've got phones and they can manage contact between themselves. That's a different thing. But whilst they're young, unfortunately, what we need to do is learn to be strong and play the game and know that they are going to mess things around. It is kind of tough, but having your support system around you, having other people, maybe, for example, if you're not reliant on them for taking the kids to a club after school because someone else is going to do that, they can still go and see the kid. And if they turn up on time to pick them up, great. But if they don't, there's a backup plan. Again, it feels like, well, I'm mopping up after them. It's all about the kids. It's all about doing what's best for them. Okay. And it is really hard. I totally understand how hard it is. Okay. If you've got any other points you want to bring up on that, Kristen, then just do let us know. Priya says, thank you, Sara. How do we let go of knowing he will pollute the children when they're with him? I get worried the children will get manipulated and be ruined over time being with him. I find it hard to let go of the worry. This is something that, is obviously really normal, Priya. So please, this is something that so many people are dealing with. The thing is, what happens with children is that they need one stable parent to be okay. Okay, I totally, there's been a lot of research that backs this up too. They need one stable parent. By stable, I mean unconditional love. Okay, you are their rock, you're their stability. They know they can come to you with anything. Okay, they need to know right from wrong, and they need to know they're safe with you. Okay, one thing that kids with an abusive ex will feel, even if they, if they're spending time with them, they won't feel safe like they feel with you, because emotionally they'll know they're not, because they're on that kind of up, down, high, low with them, on that roller coaster with them as well. So they're going to see how they're interacting with other people. They're not going to have that safety and security they have with you. Now, kids can go one of three ways with this. Okay, so this is why this is really important, that you are strong and stable. If you are strong and stable, you've got clear values, you are making things very clear to them, and you're reinforcing good behavior, acceptable behavior, You're being very clear on right from wrong. And if there's lies being told, saying, well, that's not my truth, this is my truth. Okay, this is what I believe, this is the situation, but without causing an argument or pitting them against the other parent, right? It's really important. But again, as we talked about up front, talking about, sometimes we don't always go to see eye to eye, and that's not what happened. That is not what happened. Maybe you're a bit young right now for me to explain it, but that isn't what my version is, because that's not how I remember things. Okay, so that you're still putting that across, because if you don't let them know that there is another story, another side to that story, they're only going to hear one side. Okay, they're only going to hear that, and then that's the voice that shouts the loudest. Well, it might actually be shouting the loudest, but if that's the voice they only hear, they don't ever hear two sides to the debate, they're going to be more drawn to that. So kids can become abusive. Okay, I said there was one of three ways they could go. They can become abusive because they don't see another option, and they see that the other parent is struggling and they don't want to be struggling. Okay, or they become the victim and they walk on eggshells around them. Okay, so that's again not ideal. Or they go, I don't want anything to do with this. I recognize it for what it is. I'm going to have my own relationship with that parent, but I'm not going to get involved in that other side. And that's what we want, ideally, but you need to be a strong, stable parent for that single parent. And you can all do that, okay? It's not rocket science. It just means following the things that we're talking about here, not engaging, not living and breathing the ex all the time and focusing on them. It's all about you having, a life of your own, which enables you to have control over other things in your life. There might be some things that they're always going to throw grenades in, like the schedule and things like that. And that is a nightmare, but it's something that you can put over here. And when it rears its ugly head, you manage it one at a time. Okay. You never let them know how upset it makes you. You never go back with ranting or anger, because that feeds it. Okay. We just take a break. We breathe. We might discuss it with somebody that understands this. Whether it's a good friend who's rational, or someone that wants to make things, unintentionally can make things worse for you. Really need to talk to somebody about this. That's why coaches, like my coaches, a lot of them are on here, are great at that kind of stuff. It's what we're trained to do. But obviously the charity might be able to help you too, if you've got charity support too. So just see where you can get that help from, whether it's a friend, a parent who understands this too. It's really important that you're dealing, who your support system is, really understands, so they can best help and advise you. So again, it's not about letting go of knowing he's going to pollute, because he's not. It's just, if you can create the foundation where you've got open communication in a non-bad-mouthing way, where they understand right from wrong. And you can use movies you're watching or TV shows you're watching just to constantly be highlighting kindness is better. Empathy, just if they show empathy, rewarding the empathy, talking about how understanding things from other people's view is really important. And just building those muscles, emotional muscles and tools within your kid. Okay, it's really important, because that is a contrast effect, and they're going to see that the school and their friends and family, they all follow those values, right? Well, most of them will do. So then, what's going on in the other house becomes something quite unique and different, and doesn't fit in with the morals and values they're learning in other places. So I hope that helps, Priya. Right, I think we've got a few other questions here as well. I've got one actually that somebody sent in, Deborah sent in, so I'm going to answer that too. Now, Deborah says that she separated in 2016. He continues to abuse through the courts, continue to lie and cheat the justice system as he's self-employed. Again, really common, which is why I say, if you can avoid getting into the court system, and I know sometimes that's really hard because you think you're going to go in and get justice, then I would avoid it. But if you don't have a choice, and many people in these situations don't, because the ex drags you through there because they want their day in court, then that's something that is, we just then have to handle very carefully. She's got an appeal hearing coming up. He's refusing to have it adjourned. How do you stop him doing this? Again, that's legal advice, which I cannot give you, I'm afraid. So go to Stowe Law for that and see if they can help you with that. The second question is that he repeatedly controls and gaslights my 14-year-old daughter and refuses to send her home. And he doesn't adhere to the order. Okay, so again, Deborah, I feel for you, because I know a lot of us have been in these situations. So what I would say is that you can't control what he's doing, but you can give your daughter the tools to cope. Okay, so for example, you could teach your daughter what to do in those scenarios. Talk it through with her, because it's going to be distressing for her, because she knows what's supposed to be happening, and obviously there's no details on what she's feeling right now. However, so I'm just seeing a message coming in here from Jennifer. I'm going to come to that in a second because it's really important. But Deborah, I would empower your daughter with tools and skills so that she can cheer herself up. So whether that's body language, listen to my podcast, it's all in there. There's loads of tools of how to manage this. But teaching kids how to cheer themselves up, giving them positive coping strategies, okay? Because there's so many negative ones that I have access to now. And what we want to do is just make sure that they have a resource so they can cheer themselves up. They can learn how to see this. Again, understanding at 14 that the behavior patterns might be good, but without, I know it's a very fine line, but without bad mouthing. But sometimes now she's 14, she's going to have her own opinion. You know, understand that everybody works the same. And some people are more selfish, less caring, do things to break the rules rather than adhere to the rules, so that she can disassociate. You know, that disassociating game of ticking off the things that you see on the list rather than feeling upset by it all the time will actually empower her. I've used this with 14-year-old kids, actually girls, and it is really helping a lot of them out there. Just because it's disassociating them a little bit emotionally and they're seeing it for what it is. But again, finding a way to modify the list so that it's not necessary, so that it's definitely not a negative. Okay, it's not a, well, it is a negative, but you're not bad mouthing your ex, because anything you do like that will be used against you. So you have to have a very fine line if you end up in court. Okay, so again, I'm definitely not saying to highlight that they have a personality disorder or calling them names, but just explain that some people have different personalities. Maybe, you know, you might know other people, maybe this is a teacher at school or someone that you know that also, or in a movie that can also be a little bit like that. And so this is how to spot those things. Okay, Katie says, my ex has been charged with coercive control against me and is facing Crown Court next year. Since he was remanded in custody for breaching his bail conditions in August, he has withheld my 12-year-old and 9-year-old against me. I'm awaiting family court this week. He turned the kids against me and is saying they don't want to see me. I have been struggling with PTSD and starting drinking more. He's using this against me, saying I'm an unfit mother. Oh, Katie, I feel for you. I mean, this is really tough. I mean, there's a lot here. It's a big question. Where you have been alienated from your kids, that is a really tough, it's disgusting behavior, and alienation is quite often seen, attempted alienation anyway. I mean, your kids are still pretty young, so you've got some room there. I would, obviously, you are going to family court. Do you have a lawyer? Do you have legal advice you can take on this? Because obviously I would suggest that that's something that's important to you. You need a lawyer who understands this, okay, coercive control. You must get a lawyer that understands it, otherwise it's so tough. I've interviewed a few on my podcasts. It is a very difficult scenario. Let's see, I was struggling with PTSD and drinking more. Okay, so I mean, it's important that you look after yourself, and let's try and get you back up there. Who is supporting you? Who do you have? Reestablishing a relationship with your kids is really, again, sustained, unconditional love. Them knowing that you care about them, that you love them, that you're there for them, in an appropriate way, so that they still know that they're there, because at that age they're going to know they're being pulled around. Okay, sorry, I can't really give you more of an answer because I don't know enough, but I hope that's helped. Beata, my ex is alienated our 2 teenage boys from me to the extent that the oldest doesn't speak to me and the youngest doesn't want to stay at my place, even though technically I have custody. We're going through another lengthy custody court battle with my ex. Kafkas has recommended shared arrangements. I've not seen my boys for weeks, and my ex said they don't want to. How do I take my control back? Guys, these questions are, I really feel for you, because where your kids have been unfairly alienated, it is a really, really tough position, because obviously you don't have that much access to them to be able to influence them. But, you know, teenage boys, I mean, again, you know, sustained, trying to do the right thing, letting them know you're there, not, you know, for letting them know you're always going to be there, you love them, is really the best way forward at this point. I'm not sure how you do that. Again, if you came to me for a session and we dived into it, maybe we could look at that, or one of my coaches. But in the short session, I don't have enough information to really give you answers, unfortunately. These situations, guys, are so common, and I deal with this all the time. I see so many people who have been put in this position where their kids have been turned against them, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. In some cases, you can work on that, and the courts will see. And obviously, if you've got CAFCAS saying that they should have shared custody, that's a great positive. And also looking after yourself in the meantime, because it's so hard when you don't have access to your kids and you're worried about what's going on the other side. Oh, guys, this is tough, right? There's a lot of pain out there. Okay, Jennifer says, we have to find a family therapist before we can see each other again. Am I going to see children again? Feels like I'm against Kafka's social worker. They're trapped around the corner from me. Okay, guys, you have to be really careful about what experts you get involved in your cases. For any of you that are dealing with false allegations against you for alienation, you've got to really be very, very careful, okay? I would suggest that anyone that puts themselves out there as a parental alienation expert, you need to be quite wary of, because there's lots of evidence and research to show that they are not very often working, they have a bias towards against the victim of abuse. Okay, not all of them, but there's a lot of evidence, and you need to research this and look at it. Okay, I think, you know, there are some really good family therapists out there, but you have to be aware that maybe your lawyers don't know all the pitfalls that are out there. Okay, some of your lawyers won't know that getting someone who specializes in alienation is not always the best thing to do, because they may have their own very entrenched views which are not sympathetic to abuse. In fact, there's been some, you know, some of the people in the UK who campaign against these sort of issues. Again, I've interviewed them in my podcast. Listen to those, because there are pitfalls. So Jennifer, if you're going down this route, make sure you listen to Rachel Watson's interview with me and Natalie Page, hashtag the court said, maybe Jessica Taylor as well. Again, all the domestic abuse ones, listen to them, because they're going to give you lots of advice from people that work and know about experts in the court system. Okay, just finding a family therapist can be, because what happens is once you've got an expert on, they're absolutely key to your case, because they're the ones talking to you, whether it's CAFCAS, they're talking to you, or social workers or independent social workers. They're talking to you and your kids. Okay, the judge isn't. So what happens when you get back into court? They have a lot of sway because an influence over the judge, because the judge doesn't know. He's relying on them to put the truth forward. And the vetting process to be an expert in court is very, very low right now. And that's something that I know that a lot of the people that campaign are high up in those sort of areas are looking to change, to vet experts so that they're not biased, they're not bringing any bias in. Obviously, there are some great therapists out there. There are some great experts in court. There are some great social workers and all the rest of it. But there are also other people in there that aren't. And we have to be very wary of this as victims of abuse, okay? So what I would suggest is doing some research, listening to those interviews from people that have been through this on my podcast, and using that advice, Jennifer, because before you agree, okay, because the beauty is of this whole thing, to have a therapist, a family therapist, you have to agree them. If you don't agree them, then that person doesn't get the job. But you have to know what you're looking for with a therapist, okay? I was totally surprised and floored by post-separation abuse, including at court refinances, trying to co-parent. So many grenades. I've learned a lot, strengthened myself, and tried to avoid engaging with him as much as possible. You've been so helpful, Sara. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Good, but it sounds like you're on the right track. Recognizing the grades is a really positive step forward. I know it seems like, oh, does that help? It does. It massively does, because you're getting more clarity and you're seeing them come in rather than running, going, oh my God, I've got to deal with this. You're like, oh, here we go. What is it you're doing? Tick off the checklist. And what is it where you want me to move on the chessboard here? This is what you're trying to get me to do. Okay, now is this a battle I need to fight, or is this a battle I can appear to allow you to win? Is this a battle that I just can walk away from and don't need to answer? You don't need to answer everything in every situation, okay? And only you will know your ex as to, but we've got to get savvy, guys. Don't always be in reaction. If you imagine that they've got you on a string, puppet on a string, because they've trained you over the years, and it's normal, it's not your fault, but this is how they've trained you and conditioned you to react. What we need to do is start consciously cutting those strings, because your instinct is going to be to react because you've been trained. So it's going to be like, oh, okay. But then we need to consciously go, I'm doing that thing again, which is where the checklist comes in really handy, because we're disassociating. We're going, hang on, Instead of me going down my heart racing, feeling sick, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go, just breathe for a minute. Let's just see on the checklist, what is this? What's going on here? Okay. And then when you've identified what that is, then it takes some of that negative intensity away. So you're dialing down those negative emotions and you're enabling yourself to actually just breathe a bit and say, right, game plan this. Take the emotions out. It's going to hurt. They want it to hurt. But you were hurting probably last week, last month, 2 years ago, maybe 5, 10 years ago. Okay. So hurting again now doesn't mean that it's going to make it any better or it's going to stop it. So we need to try and remove that emotional roller coaster and start like disassociating from that so we can just see it for what it is, which is sick. It's just a sick game. Okay. But mastering that will give you your power back. Okay. My ex took me through about 10 court hearings. The family finances were controlled by him, using an army of lawyers to defeat me and leave everything behind, including the child. I was struggling to make contact, make ends meet, and raise the child at all by myself. There was no support network for me. My 8-year-old son is scared of my ex and doesn't want to talk to him. Is there anything I should be doing to rebuild the father relationship? The ex doesn't bother me to see the child and blames me for the broken relationship. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's not your, I mean, look, yeah, I don't know enough. It's very hard with these situations because, it's really tough and there's so many different ways you could go. Again, if you are supportive of him having a relationship with his father, if it is safe for him to do so, obviously he's scared of something and he's so young. Some kids, especially kids that have been with a toxic partner, are scared to speak out, just like, maybe you are, because the wrath of that's going to be unleashed on you if you speak your mind or have any freedom of speech, right? So your kids pick up on that unconsciously, and sometimes they find it hard to express because they've got a lot of fear in there. They've been trained to in a certain way by either watching what they're doing with other people or with them. So they find it really hard to express. So that can just manifest over a period of time as real fear or anxiety or stress, right? So they might act out over going there or not want to go there. So this is a totally normal reaction. There's nothing wrong with your kid. Your kid doesn't suffer from some anxiety issue. It is a normal anxiety generated by a very difficult situation, okay? What we need to do is give him the coping tools to dial down the anxiety and start to see how he can forge and navigate that path with his dad himself. Okay, now I don't know enough to be able to help you with that from this, but hopefully that shows you that it's not about you going out and saying, right, let's go meet with your dad necessarily, unless that's something that your son wants to do or you feel you can work towards over a period of time. But it's about supporting him in learning to navigate, giving him the tools so that he is in a better place to navigate that relationship as and when he chooses to. And maybe you can suggest that a little bit further down the line. And that might be something that you do together, like all three of you go out and do something, or it might be something that he does on his own with his dad if it's safe to do so again. But again, to get your son into a position where he can have that ability to navigate that relationship, I think is really important. So giving him the tools to dial down that anxiety, giving him some clarity about learning to express how he feels, why, talking about different emotions, and just, you can get those little books for kids which have different emotions. And at that age, maybe just pointing at what emotions are you feeling so that they're not just a big foggy mess of negative emotions. It's, well, specifically, I'm feeling stressed, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm angry, or I'm hurt, or I'm sad. That actually identifying that specific emotion and then giving him some tools, whether that's playing a happy song, his favorite song, whether that's doing 5-star jumps. How does he regulate how he's feeling to dial down that anxiety? If you can give your kids the tools to manage the symptoms of being the child of someone who's very toxic, then they'll be stronger to navigate that path. I hope that really helps. I think it can do so. Maybe try that. Okay, running out of time. Oh, we are running out of time, but let's have a look. There's lots of questions still, Rachel. How can I get help to free myself from him financially? My ex uses money to control. He earns a lot of money and pays me regular maintenance, but I live under the threat he will reduce the payments. He's lied about money in the past, run up debt in my name, which I've finally cleared. Well done. We've been separated for 5 years. And the moment I mention divorce, he gives up for a fight. I know it will make it difficult because I'm scared of proceeding because of this. He plays a victim role despite having been physically and verbally abusive me. It causes me huge stress. Yeah. Have you taken any legal advice on this? Because this... So there's no legal finance audit in place. I would advise that you take some legal advice on that to find out legally what the real threat is, because quite often they will threaten you with things. And if you don't know what your actual situation is, it can be really difficult. So you believe what they're saying. Quite often it's not true, or there might be an element of that, or it might be a potential risk, but it's very not likely. Okay. So I would suggest that you take some legal advice as to what would your situation be and what the impact could be. What's the worst case? What's the best case? And then you'll make better decisions. At the moment, you're staying stuck because it appears you don't have enough clarity, and that's very common. The reason a lot of us stay stuck is because we don't know enough about our situation to make an informed decision. So getting clarity, whether that's from a lawyer, maybe go to Citizens Advice Bureau, maybe phone Stowe and ask them what they think. I mean, they're a great law firm because they are very open to an understanding of what domestic abuse is and how it can impact. Katie, I have a family lawyer. It's hard when they're completely turned against you. Yeah, it's really tough. With shared care, do you have any suggestions when we have to make joint decisions? Yeah, don't let them know what you want, and always talk about what's in the best interest of the child. Okay, it's never about, I like this school. Okay, that's not what to say. It's about, she really enjoys ballet. They have a great ballet class. The other schools don't. And just working out why the school that obviously you know what you want, but what you want, I know, is going to be based on what's in the best interest for the child. So again, the best thing to do is collate the list of, well, this is what she wants, this is what her strengths are, this is what she's good at, and this is what she's going to need to pull out her potential at her next school. So this is why this school is way above the other schools in that what is best for her. Do you see what I mean? You're not going, well, I like this school. That never comes out of your mouth. Tactically is what I would suggest. Look, guys, you can worry about all sorts of things. If they do it, you deal with it. Okay. I know there's always the constant threat. They're going to take me to court. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Okay. Bring it on if you're going to do it. If you're not, then I'm just going to get on with my life. Okay. You kind of got to have that attitude, or they're always going to be controlling you. The cold, harsh reality is we could all get hit by a bus tomorrow. Okay. Worrying about things that haven't happened yet, that's what they want. They are winning. Remember, go back to the checklist. It's confusing, it's worrying, it's causing anxiety, it's impacting your day, it's eroding your self-esteem, it's eroding your ability to be happy. Okay, this is where we take control back and go, okay, if you serve court papers on me, well, it's not going to be the first time and I will get through it. Okay, we'll deal with that. And then if you do up and move sticks and go to a different place, we'll deal with that. You will deal with it. Look at everything you've dealt with so far. Please don't worry about what might happen in the future, because that's part of their controlling tactic. They're putting these things out there and planting these seeds in your head because they know this is what you're going to do, and they win. They have no intention of doing that. In fact, the likelihood is they probably don't. It's about recognizing the tactic. That is a tactic to continue being a grey cloud in your life every single day. Okay, if they're going to do it, let them step up and do it. They can threaten it. They can say they're going to do it until the point they do it, and then we solutionize. Okay, we don't get ourselves worked up about what could happen next, because in my experience, there's a million things they could do, and some of them they will do, and some of them they won't do. So let's not worry about it until it happens, knowing that actually, you can deal with it when it comes up. And there's a lot of people out there that can help you through any scenario. Okay, let's keep going. Priya, thank you, Sara. Oh, sweetie. I feel grateful that you have opened this discussion up so we don't feel alone. Please know you're not alone. Oh my goodness, if you could see my inbox, my DMs on my social media, follow me on Sara Davison Divorce Coach on Instagram, guys. I post a lot of videos. I work with a lot of people. There's a lot of things on there that would be useful for you if you're not following me. Sara Davison Divorce Coach, a lot of free content on there, as with the podcast. Yeah, definitely sign up to podcast. Hi, Sara. Is it proper for an ex to keep bringing up past? I've been over 1 year and 2 months sober, and he keeps bringing up my bad past, making it terrible, making me look terrible and necessary as a lawyer. It was super hard to deal with during rehab, traumatizing my season. Any advice? Okay, take a step back. What's he doing? What's the move here on the joke? Anyone else? What's he doing? Okay. Lisa, you said you don't like that answer. Kids to regulate when being emotionally hurt. That's why they're anxious. Don't have contact. Doesn't sit right with me. Legal versus ethics. It's right when being emotionally hurt. That's why they're. I don't really understand that, Lisa, but feel free to explain more. So listen, Charmel, one of the things I'd say is that your ex is going to do things to upset you. This is how they're wired. Okay, this is what they do. This is their whole modus operandi. This is the reason for this. He knows that's a weak point. As long as he sees he's getting a reaction from you, he's going to keep doing it. Okay, so what we need to do is focus on who you are now, where you are now in your recovery. Okay, and just be a shining light for that. Be proud of yourself and know that your ex resents you moving forward, because that's why they keep harping on about the past, trying to pull you back. This should be one of those screw you, watch this moments. Screw you, watch this, or another version of screw you, which is my motto, screw you, watch this, is kind of like, okay, I see your tactic. I see what you're aiming for. I see where you want me to go with this. But actually, this is what I'm doing, because I take my power back. I own my life and I'm moving on. Okay. So that's, again, something that I find quite empowering for a lot of my clients. It's not proper for him to keep bringing it up, but where there's no proper in their world, if you look at it as a, well, they're not doing what they should do, you're always going to be caught in that abuse cycle because you're just sucked into it. They're not rational. They're not logical. They never will be. They can't be. Again, you're setting your expectations here and coming in here. They can't. They are going to do everything they can to hurt you. So if you show them a weakness, they're going to pick at it, stamp on it, jump up and down on it. So what we have to do is no reaction. Obviously, if you're going through a court process, you need to be able to prove, that you are in recovery potentially. I don't know your court process, so I can't really comment on that. But if whatever is important to you to show, be the shining light and example for that. Don't worry about where they're taking you. Throwing mud, in legal letters, your lawyer can say, this is just totally untrue. I'm not going to respond to this. This is wholly untrue, or whatever your lawyer advises you best to do. Okay. You don't need to get drawn back into it. As long as you're stating it's not true in legal letters. So when a judge reads it, he says, this is what's going on. And then your letter is, this isn't true. It's factually incorrect. End of. Okay. I mean, obviously I don't give legal advice. So you just need to check these things with your lawyer, but they're never going to do the proper thing because that's not how they work. Okay. So I hope that's helped, but please, it's interesting. Why aren't those practical advices available once we're in touch with police? Oh, Tracy, I wish I knew, Is it I can't see your full name there, but why aren't those practical advices available once we're in touch with the police, social services, family court? Well, you know what? There's a lot of us working to get that advice out. That's why I'm doing this today, which is why I did the Stowe webinar, which is why I do the interviews on the podcast with all the people on the podcast. They're doing exactly the same thing. So this is important. Okay, this is really important. It is important to get it out there. There are so many people campaigning and trying to make changes out there, but unfortunately, the system is very antiquated. It's very toxic. And there's a lot of things that are fundamentally flawed with the family court system in the UK, but all over the world. If you listen to my interviews with Dr. Karen Williams on my podcast, she's in Australia and they have exactly the same issues there. I also interview people in the States. They have exactly the same issues there. So this is a global issue. If you listen to Jessica Taylor, she has quite a few answers why this is the case. You may or may not agree with them. I think she's fabulous, by the way. But there are a lot of things that aren't right. All we can do is get clarity, get educated, take your control back where you can. And as someone's highlighted there, thank you, when it is safe to do so, okay? Doing the best thing by your child by giving them the coping tools, there's coping strategies to manage what happens. We want to wrap them in cotton wool. We want to make sure nothing bad happens. Unfortunately, they have to learn this lesson with this particular toxic parent. As I said on the Stowe webinar, kids are more resilient than you think. And actually learning these lessons at a young age is actually very empowering for them moving forward, okay? Because they're going to know that this exists, that these personalities, these behaviors are out there, and they're going to be able to disassociate and learn if you teach them these tools, right? They're going to be empowered. So when they go to work and someone's bullying them, or maybe someone's controlling them, or they've got some sort of sociopathic boss, they're going to spot it. Their radar will be honed to a point where they go, oh my goodness, I see what's going on. I'm going to get the hell out of it. Or I know how to contain this. I know it's not about me. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole going, what's wrong with me? Allow them to get their claws in and start controlling me like the puppet on the string. I'm going to go, oh, I see ya. okay, take a different path. So actually, can be a valuable life lesson and a gift for kids. So I know a lot of you aren't going to agree with me on this. Oh my God, we saw 22 messages. Amanda's on. Hello, Amanda. I did mention you up front. Don't know if you were on then. You do not need to seek your ex's approval anymore. It's very important to remember. Yeah, very good point. What do you do if your child is saying things that you know is coming from the mother? I can stay calm. He's being manipulative and saying things with a supervised concept that will try to get me into trouble. I think you need to document everything. 6, your kid doesn't know what he's doing. Don't take it personally. It's really sad, but I do think you need to document everything and get legal advice on this, but from a lawyer that understands coercive control and, you know, attempted alienation. Okay, it's really important. Okay, lots of people agreeing with you, Amanda. It's a very good point. I was completely confused. Police would send you to Women's Aid who are only concerned about safety and have to send you legal advice. Yeah, I mean, look, these Women's Aid, you know, charities are massively underfunded in this country. Okay, if you have spare money, please donate to domestic abuse charities. They literally are scrabbling around for something that is, you know, so important. The Dash charity get all this, you know, they are incredible. But again, if you're not in their area, it's really hard. Yeah, it just doesn't happen. It's the education and the understanding and the intrinsic issues in the family court system is the biggest issue. The abusers should be forced to have therapy and regulate their emotions. It's impossible, I'm afraid. There is no cure. They can't get better. It's us that have to recognize it, protect ourselves from it, and then hone your radar so you spot it in other people. Remember, if you've attracted one of them, you're going to be like a flame from moths coming at you. So you have to hone your radar so that you spot the signs of abusive partners, which we've been through today. And if you see any of those, you deploy your parachute, get the hell out of there. You may have to work with them. You may have to, you know, you might have some in your family. You might have to navigate. But please don't overshare. No contact where possible. Where you do have to have contact, just zip up your Teflon suit. If you can spot these people now, this turns into a gift for you. You're not going to go through this again. You've got to learn the lessons here. And please, again, expectations that therapy is going to help them. It's just not, okay? In a rational world, you know, ideal world, but it just isn't, you know, as you say, they won't change. I appreciate it's very difficult. They won't change, Liesl. They won't have therapy. They won't, because they're better than everyone. It's not their fault. It's everyone else's fault. Again, we've got to get into that mindset. Life is not fair. It's not about teaching lessons to abusers, but to help the abused cope and move through to a better place. Lovely, Isabel. Well said. Yes. The thing is, we're going to shift our focus from them, put it on us and the kids, right? That's how we get through this. We take the lessons, we learn, we get more clarity, we get stronger, and we use this to either help other people. As I know a lot of my coaches are on here training to help other people with this information because they've been through it themselves, like me. Yeah, this is my driver. You learn it and then you want to go and help other people with this. It's really important that we get this information out there, as you can see. But again, we're not going to change them. So stop banging our heads on the wall for that. We need to look at learning so we're stronger, we cope with it better, our kids are empowered to cope with it better, and we learn, you know, the pitfalls of navigating a court system or any of those issues, as you know, to get us through as safely as possible and our kids. Life isn't fair. Okay, not sure how effective. Yeah, you can't go into, yeah, everyone's agreeing there. My lawyer says not enough evidence of parental alienation, but when a parent decides to cut off all maternal family members, surely that's enough evidence. He's using my mental health diagnosis to get away with this form of abuse. Okay, I suggest the girlfriend is pregnant. How's the UK in this mess? God, I wish I had the answers to this. It is, I agree with you and I feel for you. I think getting in touch with people that understand more about the situation. I mean, you've got evidence there. I would maybe contact someone like people like #TheCourtSaid, Rachel Watson. They help you. There's a book actually, How to Annihilate a Narcissist in the Family Court, which I have up there somewhere, written by Rachel Watson, which again is quite helpful. Yeah, if your lawyer is saying that, don't just, you know, some lawyers are great and they really get this. A lot of lawyers think they get it, but they just don't because they haven't been through it. And a lot of them will be learning on your case. So ultimately what we need to do is find people that really do get it. Okay. And that's why I would speak to some of the experts on my podcast, because they really do. Amanda says, no one can be forced to get more healthy. They have to want it themselves. They will never submit themselves to therapy because they're always right. Exactly. Brilliant. Okay. Well, we've kind of gone through all the questions in the chat. I'm sorry for those of you who are going through this. I know it's really hard, but please know you're not alone. Follow me on Instagram because I will post up other webinars and things that I'm doing to support. Reach out to your local charity services if you can, if they are available and you can get support through there. You will get through this, okay? You will, and it will make you stronger. And that's what I want for you. Don't look at this as like this is destroying you. This is actually making you stronger. This is your choice to step up, to get educated about what's going on here, turn it around, okay? Erosima says, how often do professionals use the method to silence the mothers of Section 37? Unfortunately, all the friggin' time, okay? They don't recognize it in a lot of cases, okay? And it's one of my biggest pains in my whole life that this is happening right now to all of you. So what we can do, what can you do? Take your control back and make sure you've got a team around you who get what's going on, okay? Make sure your lawyer really gets it. Make sure they understand the kind of experts you might be getting into. If you're going into a court situation, please make sure your expert is not someone that's going to hurt you and your child. It's going to be someone that is going to help you and your child and really is professional, unbiased, and knows what they're doing, okay? Great. Thank you for joining. I know we've gone over, but I just wanted to try and get through all your questions. Thanks to everyone for your comments. Lovely to see so many of my coaches on here. Again, you guys use this as a learning to get stronger, to empower your kids. If you can do that, you're going to end up in a much stronger place. Okay. Remember, screw this, screw you, watch this. If you can remember that little phrase, that will help you detach, get less emotional, empower you to move forward, then that is going to help you move forward, you and your kids. You can get through this. You can come out the other side stronger and wiser and a lot happier. Okay, lots of love to you all. Thanks for all your lovely comments. And I will see you again. I'll do another one of these because I know it's helped a lot of people. And thank you so much for sharing. You're all amazing. Keep up the great work, everyone. Mwah. Have a lovely weekend.